Hello, welcome back to the lecture series on the text English for Career. We are dealing with Module 3, Reading Comprehension. In the earlier videos, we had explained 3 passages. So, today we'll be looking at passage 9 in your text. As always, let's begin by reading the passage very carefully. This time, you have a story as your reading comprehension passage. So, let's now move on to passage 9. When I was young, I always imagined old age to be a state of happiness, with naps taken while reclining in an armchair, playing with all my grandchildren, narrating tales and prattling with them, gossiping with friends and relatives who visited, and bossing over people in the house. Now that I'm old, I understand it better. Further, I now realize that there is a great difference between spending one's old age in a village and spending it in a city. In a large city, everyone lives by himself or herself. Neighbors do not pay casual visits, and when they call on them, they sit as if on thorns and are impatient to see us off, forcing a cup of coffee on us in spite of our protests. Therefore, it is better to sit on this balcony and watch passers-by. As I sit here looking out, thoughts both old and new flit through my mind. That has become my pastime now. What is that, Kamala? I asked. I am sowing the seeds of a creeper, she replied. Which creeper? Is it that of shanked flowers? I asked. No, it's called woodrose, she said, continuing to dig the soil. I have never heard of a flower by that name. These people call the Jamandi too by its English name. What do they look like? I asked, thinking that she may be referring to some well-known flower by its English name. At first, bell-shaped yellow flowers appear. Later, from the middle of these, flowers of sandalwood color which look like roses bloom, she explained. Do they give out any fragrance? Are they suitable for worship? I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. They don't have any fragrance but are beautiful to look at. If arranged in a vase, they stay fresh for a very long time. I remained silent because my suggestions were never taken. After about 10 days, one seed sprouted. I cannot put into words my daughter-in-law's joy. She carefully tended it, and as the sprout grew into a sapling, she pulled it up, tying it to a pipe so that it could crawl up to the terrace. In the next 3 months, the creeper climbed up and spread over the entire balcony wall. My worry was that it would obstruct my view from the balcony and deny me even the small pleasure of watching passers-by. Unable to control my anxiety, I once tried to broach the subject with my daughter-in-law. Whatever her thoughts were, she pulled the creeper tight with the help of wires and strings so that it would only spread on the terrace. Once, while cleaning the house, she arranged some flowers in a glass vase on the table. Along with yellow, red, and pink roses, she also stuck some roses of the color of sandalwood. They appealed to me in a strange way. I held the flowers in my hand, wondering what they were. They appeared dry and crumbly. What types of flowers are these? Why are they like this? Why have you arranged them with the fresh ones? I asked. These are called wood roses. This arrangement is meant to symbolically show that old age and youth coexist. The wood roses stand for old age and the fresh flowers for youth. Such flower arrangement is called ikebana. Why don't you call it mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? I said laughingly. She too laughed. From that day onwards, I sat on the balcony waiting to see the wood roses bloom instead of watching passers-by. I felt a certain affinity for that creeper growing in me. We have read the passage carefully. Now we look at the important points. As you look at the important points, I want all of you to make associations, make connections so that you can answer the questions given at the end of the passage more easily. So let's just take a look at the story in a nutshell. The story is basically about a woman who had certain expectations of old age. And she thought that it was a time of fun and relaxation. She could take naps, talk to her grandchildren and relatives. She could boss over everybody else in the household. So this is what she thought old age would be. In reality, she finds old age to be different. And this difference in expectations has really crushed her spirit. She's not very happy with the life that she has now. And the story also focuses on the relationship between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, who's called Kamala. We find that the relationship is rather awkward. It is rather distant. So the mother-in-law imagines that she might not be a welcome presence in the family. She thinks that her suggestions might not be taken very nicely. So she doesn't say much. But we don't see Kamala being rude or arrogant towards her mother-in-law. So we can just take it as a sort of prejudice, a sort of preconception that the mother-in-law has in her mind. One day, Kamala plants a particular seedling and the mother-in-law wants to know what the plant is. Kamala replies that it is a wood rose. The mother-in-law wants to know what a wood rose is, whether the flower or the plant has any particular uses. And Kamala replies that it is a plant that the mother-in-law is not familiar with. And then the mother-in-law has the anxiety that, when the creeper grows up, will it obstruct the view from her room, because she prefers to look at the road and the passers-by. So Kamala, she ties the plant up in such a way that it doesn't obstruct the old lady's view. One day, the old lady finds a very strange flower arrangement in her room, where the fresh flowers are kept with a dry and crumbly looking flower, which she cannot identify. When she asks the daughter-in-law for an explanation, Kamala replies that dry flower is the wood rose. Such type of flower arrangement is called an ikebana. And she says that the wood rose stands for old age, the new flowers stand for youth. So when she is keeping it together, it means that old age and youth can coexist. And the mother-in-law gets the point. She laughingly says, let's call it daughter-in-law and mother-in-law. And from that day onwards, there is a change in the old lady. She learns to be more accepting. She learns to the need to accept change in her life. Things cannot be the way she imagined it to be. She learns to let things go and accept things as they come. And the story ends on a very positive note, where the old lady says that now I find it more appealing to look at the wood rose than at the road. So now let's go on to the questions. The first few questions are multiple choice questions. So the first question is, the word prattling means a way of talking to. Options are A, friends, B, old people, C, small children, D, adults. See, prattling basically means, you talk about something extremely silly for a very long time, or you talk about inconsequential things. That is what prattling means. And in the passage, right at the beginning, she says, I always imagined old age to be a state of happiness, with naps taken while reclining in an armchair, playing with all my grandchildren, narrating tales and prattling with them. So prattling here means a way of talking to small children. So the correct answer is option C. The second question is, affinity is closest in meaning to. Option A, dislike. Option B, liking. Option C, infinity. Option D, allergy. You will find this word right at the end of the passage, where the lady says, I felt a certain affinity for that creeper growing in me. So affinity means liking or having a particular affection. So here the correct answer is option B, liking. Question number 3. The phrase broach the subject means to introduce the topic, have an argument, avoid the topic, disagree with some. Okay, you will find this particular phrase in the paragraph that begins with the sentence, I remain silent because my suggestions were never taken. Yeah, so come to the next page, where the old lady is talking about how she was afraid of the creeper obstructing her view. So what did she do? She decided to broach the topic with her daughter-in-law. The sentence that begins like this: unable to control my anxiety, I once tried to broach the subject with my daughter-in-law. So here broach the subject means to introduce the topic. So the correct answer is option A, introduce the topic. Now we move on to question numbers 4 and 5. Question number 4. How did the old lady imagine her old age would be like? We get the answer right at the beginning of the passage, where the old lady thought that old age would be a state of happiness. She thought she could take naps, she could relax in an armchair, she could play and talk to her grandchildren, she could talk to her friends and relatives, and she can practically tell everybody else in the household what to do. She thought that she could boss it over everybody. That is how the old lady imagined her old age. Then we have question number 5. How are city people different from those in the village? You can find the answer to this again in the first paragraph, where she says, in a large city, everyone lives by himself or herself. Yeah, from that part, you will get the answer to this question. She basically says that in a city, people are not as sociable or as friendly as people in a village. City people are more accustomed to living on their own, and even when neighbors come for a visit, city people are not very happy. They try to forcibly give you a cup of coffee and force you on your way out. So that is difference between city people and the people in village. Moving on to question number 6. How does Kamala describe the woodrose? Look at the sentence that begins like this. At first, bell-shaped yellow flowers appear. Yeah, there you will find the answer to this question. So Kamala describes the woodrose as beautiful yellow bell-shaped flowers, from which you will later get sandalwood colored rose-like blooms. Okay. She specifies that these flowers do not have any particular fragrance, but have the capability of remaining fresh for a very long time. Next question is, what do you understand about the old lady's attitude to the use of flowers from the first conversation? As soon as the mother-in-law sees Kamala planting wood roses, she has a number of questions. She asks, what do they look like? Then she asks the question, do they give out any fragrance? Are they suitable for worship? So from these questions you understand that as far as the mother-in-law is concerned, flowers should be beautiful, it should have a lovely fragrance, and it should be useful. The flowers should be useful so that it can be used for worship. So she doesn't understand why Kamala is planting wood rose which doesn't have any particular fragrance and which cannot be used for worship. Question number 8. Which of the following statements is true about the story? Option A. The daughter-in-law is insensitive to the needs of the old lady. That is false, because you find that as soon as the mother-in-law says, this plant might obstruct the view from my room, she ties it up. Option B. The old lady is a very dominating person. Again, false, because the old lady, though she has all these doubts in her mind, she doesn't say much. She only voices her doubts or her worries when she is really hard pressed. Otherwise, she doesn't say anything. Option C. The story is about village life and city life. Again, false, though there is a remark about how city people are basically different from the people in the village. The story doesn't focus on city people and village people. Option D. The story talks about the coexistence of the old and the new. That is correct, because the story has this message that the old can exist with the youth. So option D is your correct answer. Question number 9. How does Kamala explain the symbolism of the flower arrangement and what does it hold? You will find the answer to this towards the end of the passage. Look at the paragraph that begins like this. These are called wood roses. This arrangement is meant to symbolically show that old age and youth coexist. So Kamala tells her mother-in-law that such a flower arrangement is called ikebana, and she places the wood roses with fresh flowers to tell her mother-in-law that wood rose symbolically stands for old age, the mother-in-law. The fresh flowers stand for youth, that is Kamala herself, and that they both can coexist peacefully or harmoniously. Question number 10. Comment on the change of attitude in the old lady. The old lady learns to be more accepting of change, learns to be accepting of the changes that are happening in her life. And she also is now ready to let go of the preconceptions that she had in her mind. I hope all of you understood the passage, and I hope you were able to identify the answers. So that's all for now. Thank you.